So I thought, let's start with Untrailed.
Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit about the project as a whole and how you got involved?
So I guess this idea formulated from John that this kind of like race the train thing would be a really cool thing to do. And we looked around at different trails in the UK and different train stations and tried to think, where could we do something like that? And obviously we wanted it to be pretty backcountry and wilderness experience. Because more of us started talking about it, it just grew arms and legs. That we're like, oh, but we could summit some Munros and we'll bring in Kelvin, this photographer. So we'll now shoot the whole thing and then we'll bring in a film crew and we'll make this. And then there was now this like logistical excitement of trying to get all these cameras onto this trail. And while Kelvin and I still had to genuinely run this whole distance in 4 days. And the race the train thing was serious. Like Kelvin had to fly all the way back to South Africa the next day.
A lot of your adventures, running mountain ranges, you do those alone. Well, how did you cope with being with somebody else? Was that a bit of did you have to compromise, find yourself compromising?
I was scared of it because Kelvin and I didn't actually know each other. We'd spoken a lot on the lead up to it. But of course, he's based in South Africa and he'd never been to Scotland. And so we'd spoken, but I didn't know how it was going to go with us running together. I mean, he's an athlete, so I was really intimidated by just the athletic side. And yeah, obviously the best way to get to know someone and be really close to them is to do an ultra with them. Like I've done ultras with other people and you just know that you get to this really deep level pretty quickly. So that's really cool, but you have to hope that the guy's going to be cool because you got 4 days of this absolutely living together and going through probably your pain caves together and stuff like that. It's a really intimate part of my world. You know, it's something that is so important to me, something I've been doing for so long and I've been doing it alone. And so I think I'd never been in the position to have a crew around where I had to actually share this really intimate world and say like, this is the way that I do things. This is why I do things. These are the things that I think. These are the things that motivate me. Actually express them with cameras around and with people listening to you and having to write it and stuff. So it ended up just being really nice to get to share that and, you know, find people that are into it as well.
Okay. Good.
I'll adjust myself. You do what you do.
You're not in the frame, Dad.
When I tell my stories, they are honest. You know, even though I do get to say the final say in the edits and I get to decide whether or not to turn on my camera, yeah, I do take that responsibility to share an honest depiction of what my expeditions are and what I do and how I feel. I was really excited to collaborate and see how other people do this because having done this alone for so long, and, you know, as a creative, that's actually quite stifling. You need to be inspired by other people and meet other people and hear their interpretation of adventure. So it was both parts exciting and intimidating.
Was there a particular highlight to Untrailed?
Oh, there were a lot of highlights. So actually, yeah, it was the last day. Do you remember that cloud inversion?
Yeah.
And we woke up that morning and I remember looking at where we were. We had something like 40 odd kilometers to run because we'd all dillied about enjoying ourselves too much, going swimming. And
I think we slept in a little bit.
Yeah, because it wasn't going to be a sunrise.
Because it wasn't going to be a sunrise. And then we woke up to that piercing sun coming through, like filtered through the trees.
God, get in this little bag.
It was just kind of like, right, we got to get moving. And then Kelvin was like, do you want to just climb this hill right behind us? And I was just thinking like, we can't do this. We can't bag a mountain and then go run this 40 odd kilometers and make his train. Like, I was just like, oh, bloody creatives. We're going to end up having to drive. Like, we're not going to make it. So we went up the mountain. And then we got there and there was this insane cloud inversion over Loch Ness. And we were sitting there in the sunshine, drinking coffee, having a giggle, running around, getting lots of really cool shots. And I was so stoked with the shots. They look amazing. Like, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in Scotland. I'm so happy we're here. That was quite special. I do remember that morning. So I ran across Kyrgyzstan. It was 1,000 kilometers. It was really hard. And the whole time I had my little GoPro in my pocket, and I just I found that I never thought a piece of technology could improve an adventure, but actually it was making me far more aware of my surroundings and more aware of the story. And it was a really good way for me to record my thoughts. Like it kind of became my Wilson that I would kind of chat to it.
That's what I was going to say. Was it
Yeah.
your Wilson, kind of your cathartic?
Yeah, there were little crying confessions and stuff like that, and just lots of me going like, wow, this is beautiful. Just like stoke.
This path is completely washed out with snow melt, and I haven't been able to feel my feet for 2 days. Progress is really slow, and I am freezing.
I've had the privilege of editing for the
I've seen a lot of my
Montana
wee
episode.
face on your screen.
I see you run up, put the camera down,
Dork.
run back, run. But the amount of work that goes into that, you're almost doubling up this distance.
Yeah, it is physically some extra work, and there will be whole days where I don't take out the camera once, that I just don't feel like it, or I just want to have some time to myself. Sometimes, like I do keep a lot of it to myself, but for the most part, the camera is actually like this good safety feature that's like installing me with breaks and making sure that I'm, you know, connected and taking care of myself and thinking about what I'm doing and where I am.
You know, this is one of the finest views I've ever seen in the Rockies, and I just feel like, you know, I got what I came here for.
The creative process is very personal. Is it hard putting that out? What you're doing is being judged, your story's being judged.
I mean, the internet is a really scary place for anyone to expose themselves to. And I am a natural introvert. So for me, sharing a lot of my world just doesn't come naturally to me. I like storytelling, but I tell very personal stories, and I sometimes go really deep, and that is terrifying for anyone. I did a post on body image the other day, and there was something like 259 comments, and I went through every one of them. And when I'm going through that, like I'm almost in tears. Like I just can't believe that people connect with me in that way. Like I really fret about that stuff, and I was embarrassed to share that post. It's taken me a long time to be honest about my feelings there, but having that many people reply and say, this is exactly how I feel, I've been through that. So it does mean a lot to me. And so when I do create my social media posts, that's what I'm thinking about, is like, I've already connected with all these people, you know, I've spoken to them in the comments. And so I'm writing to them, and I'm not thinking about what's going to get me a lot of clicks. And then, you know, you're drawing attention to yourself. And like, to be fair, out of those, whatever it was, 250 comments, whatever it was, almost all of them were just lovely, positive, me too. And then there was just like there's that one guy who said, have you thought about strength training? And I was really insulted because one, he didn't understand the point of the post, but two, I do strength train, and he still commented that. And I was like, well, doesn't that just kick you in the gut?
The negative ones, annoyingly, do stick. You know, your values, your core values and integrity. If you're proud and you're happy with what you put out at the end of the day, that's what's important.
Yeah, because it's not going to work for everyone. My advice to anyone who delves into this sphere is you just got to know your boundaries going into it. I definitely see influencers that just overshare, and they just expose way too much of their lives. And that's why you hear about people getting burnout, and you hear about a lot of mental health issues surrounding social media, because if you don't have clear boundaries around your life, like what is public and what is private, you know, you've just exposed way too much of yourself. You've given too much. My adventure life and the things that I do and the reasons why I do them, I really do want to share that. And I really do want to find stories that I think will encourage people and inspire them. But I have really clear boundaries around how much of my personal life and my family and my home and that kind of stuff, you know, I don't think that stuff is relevant, and I think it's appropriate to keep that stuff to myself. So the boundaries are important.
So when you're traveling through places, from all those experiences, has it changed your outlook in life generally when you're back home and you're not living?
The biggest thing I think anyone gets from travel is a sense of empathy, that you start to understand the world around you because you've seen different ways of living, and that makes you, it makes you challenge your own way of living. Like, why is the way that we eat with the implements that we used to eat, why is that the only way to eat? There are other ways. You could sit on the floor, you know, like, why are we right and someone else is wrong? And when you're immersed in another culture, and especially when you are alone, and as you say, you're in a place where it's not catered for tourists, no one's built a cafe that is what you call normal, you have to emulate that culture. You have to learn to eat the way that they eat. You have to learn how to act the way that they act, and you have to immerse yourself in that experience. And that, I think it's impossible not to come away with that, from that, with a better sense of the human planet that we live on, and the fact that everyone does actually have the same core values. Everyone has the same basic hierarchy of needs. You know, the world is so colorful once you get out of doing things one certain way. I think that's something that really surprised me traveling in this way, is that you're very much discouraged from it, not just from your own culture, who are going to tell you, please don't go there, you don't know what those people are like. But even in those scenarios, like in all these countries, I've had a lot of locals that are terrified to see me because they think she doesn't know how to live in our world. We have to send her back to where we've built the Starbucks. Like, please go back to the main street where the hotels are and things that are familiar to you, because you're going to struggle here. So you kind of have to fight your way and say, like, prove to everyone around you, like, no, I can do this. I can be here. I'm gonna be part of this. Like, give me a chance. Yeah, freelancing is hard. It can be the most awesome thing in the world because you have the ultimate freedom, but that ultimate freedom comes with zero security. You know, especially what we've learned in the last year is, like, you're the first ones to go. Like, you're the most insecure people in our economy. And I made the job of my dreams. You know, the job of my dreams did not exist. There was nowhere I could apply for it. I went out and I made it. And I'm super proud of myself that I made it. But now I know, like, I've made this thing that is so precious to me. It's the most valuable thing that I have. Like, I love my career and I need to make sure it's going to be sustainable. And my biggest concern was my mental health, that I'm just like rattling on about myself all day. And I don't love myself that much. I'm an introvert. I don't want to talk about me all day long. So I thought, what's a way I could keep this going? And I started doing more behind the scenes work and getting involved in other people's adventures. And that brought me so much joy. And that's just been awesome for me. But yeah, that's the biggest thing with the freelancer is you can't stay on the same track. You have to keep on looking at what else you can do.
How do you decide, and I suppose, what are your values when it comes to partnering up with a brand?
Yeah, it's a good question. I find it kind of the hugest honor in my life that I reached this status of influencer. I know that's kind of a trigger word for a lot of people, but that is part of my job. So there's a huge responsibility in that there are people who are learning about the outdoors and about sport and themselves and adventure through the way that I portray it. So the brands that I believe in, the brands that I support, do also have to be in line with the values that I think are important, and the equipment has to be decent. You know, like, I've been approached by suboptimal gear, and I just think I can't do that, because if I tell people that this jacket is good, they might actually buy that jacket, and I can't be responsible for someone having hypothermia. So I am quite fussy. You know, this is a necessary part of the sport, and it can be a really positive part of the sport. You know, good equipment and good brands facilitate sport. We need this stuff to be able to do stuff at the highest level that we're trying to. So, you know, when you find companies that you think are doing it well, I think that's a really happy marriage. A lot of them will just be quite blatantly honest with me that, oh, you're a woman and we'd like to show that we like women and we know what they're about. So can you please work for us? And
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, I mean, greatest compliment I ever get is like, we're only calling you because you're a woman. I just love hearing that.
So you're not bothered with brands calling you up because you are a woman?
It'll bother me that the sentiment of the person is wrong, that they maybe don't understand the whole picture. But ultimately, they're going to give the gig to someone.
Yeah.
And it might as well be me. Because if I get the gig and I get to share my message and my thoughts on what it means to be a woman in the outdoors or a woman in adventure or just a human doing stuff, then I get some control over the narrative. And of course, I would prefer that than someone else who maybe doesn't fit the demographic they're looking for, or someone who doesn't fit the message. So there have been a few times where I've kind of thought, I don't feel good about myself because I didn't get this gig based on merit. I got it based on my ovaries. But ultimately, yeah, the gig's going to go to someone. And I think that's what I would say to anyone who gets a demographic job is like, well, just, you know, take that opportunity. They've just passed you the megaphone. So, yeah, you can control the narrative a little bit right now. And that's quite powerful.
I still see sexism, even passive sexism, which is, and it's a weird one to try and describe. I don't know about you, but no one's said you're a woman, you can't do this, but there's almost a passive assumption that because you're a woman, you aren't doing it.
Yeah.
almost, which is
Yeah, the passive sexism is almost more dangerous because those men don't, I'm assuming they're men, actually, they're not always men. Those people don't have a lot of awareness about the fact that they're sexist, and a lot of them would actually identify with being like a woke liberal, and then you point out to them that actually, no, what you just said there was really demeaning, and that can break their little hearts. But I mean, our discrepancies, even in Britain, are still huge. The salary gap is huge. The bias in the medical community and the science community, like everywhere you look, if you do look, there are like serious injustices still committed against women. So we still do have to work. But obviously, if you come in here at the surface level and you go, you have equal human rights on paper. So like, stop being so boring and be more fun. Do the dishes, please. Like, it's just
my food.
yeah, like, so it does still exist. And I think people get really fatigued when you talk about anything to do with activism, you know, whether it's women or climate change or Black people, like people just get fatigued because it's all change, and change is exhausting, and change takes a lot of energy, and change is terrifying. And there's obviously a big group of people who are terrified that change means they're going to lose something. So people just get really fatigued. And when you're in the position of being someone who's trying to like promote this better future, you're always conscious of the fact that if you bang the drum too hard, people are going to get angry and upset, and they're just going to stop listening because they're fatigued. And you've got to do it in a way that they're going to want to listen to. That's really exciting. And that's why I think storytelling and creativity is awesome, because people like a good story. Yeah, I think our future is bright, but we're not there yet. And to be fair, I think our future is bright in our corner of the world. And I've kind of always believed that we've got to sort ourselves out, because that ends up trickling down to the other side of the world where things are quite shit. They're not okay. And that was something that I have got to experience traveling in those parts of the world, being a solo woman and being put in the shoes of the way that women are treated in those parts of the world. And that's really stoked my fire for this is important. And I think that's why I get asked a lot in Western countries, like, you know, do we really have to keep doing the woman thing? Like, are we not there yet? And I go like, no, man, we are not there yet, because until women in Morocco are able to go for a run by themselves, we haven't done it. So yeah, we've got a long way to go, but there's been visible progress, I think, in the last even just few years.